Have you ever stopped to calculate the sheer volume of what you consume in a lifetime? Mountains of food, endless streams of desires, swinging constantly between having it all and giving it all away. But what if both paths are a trap? Imagine standing on a river bank, watching a magnificent royal palace burn to the ground. Now imagine the king who owns it, standing right beside you, completely undisturbed, while an ascetic panics over two cheap pieces of cloth. Who is truly free? From the ancient courts of India to the prison cell where Socrates calmly drank poison, from a wealthy seeker named Siddhartha who abandoned a fortune to find the universe's ultimate truth beside a humble boatman, to the agonizing 40-year physical transformation of J. Krishnamurti. These rare souls didn't just survive, they awakened. They unlocked a profound, hidden power. A power so immense that a single sage in a carriage could sweep a deadly plague from an entire city just by passing through. You were not born merely to exist. You were born to awaken. The river of life is flowing. The only question is, are you ready to step into the stream?
In today's profound talk, we will explore the true need for self-realization and why it is the greatest journey of life. Our discussion focuses on a fundamental question: why do we actually need self-realization? If you look at it deeply, you do not need self-realization just to survive and live out your daily life. This is precisely why 99% of the people in this world remain completely untouched by it. They do not even know what self-realization is, simply because they feel no need for it. Some thinkers have even declared that God is dead, pointing out that from morning to evening, we rarely feel a practical need for the divine in our everyday routines. There is an ancient materialist school of thought known as the Chavakas, who argued that pursuing self-realization is just a waste of time. They ask, what tangible benefit does it bring? After all, self-realization does not provide you with food, clothing, or shelter. Similarly, modern political ideologies have entirely dismissed the concept of spiritual awakening. Consequently, the average person in the world never feels the need for it. Most of us spend our lives trapped in indulgence, while others live in strict renunciation, constantly caught in a cycle of consume this or give up that. Very few people genuinely live in a state of awareness and deep understanding. Ultimately, self-realization is needed only by those rare individuals who truly wish to awaken and understand the deeper truth of life. Every day, you eat 3 meals, consuming roughly 250 to 300 grams each time. Between the grains, vegetables, fruits, and whatever else you eat, your total intake reaches nearly 1 kilogram a day. In a month, that adds up to 30 kilograms, and over the course of a year, you consume almost half a ton of food. If you live for 100 years, just pause and imagine, you will have consumed 500 tons of food. Since a single ton contains about 10 to 15 sacks of grain, if you truly reflect on it, you will realize that over an entire lifetime, a person consumes at least 4 fully loaded trucks of food. An equal amount of physical waste is eliminated from the body, eventually turning back into soil. This continuous physical cycle of consumption is what we call mere indulgence. Most of us spend our lives trapped in either indulgence or renunciation. We place no trust in true spiritual awareness. The renunciant looks at the indulgent person and believes they are wasting their life, while the indulgent person looks at the renunciant and believes they are needlessly tormenting themselves. These remain the two primary states of existence in our world today, and while swinging between them, people feel no real need for the divine. Less than 1% of the world's population lives with the genuine curiosity to discover why we were born and what the true purpose of our life is. Yet, even among those few who ask these profound questions, most struggle to find the ultimate answers. Once, a spiritual master sent one of his ascetic disciples, a sadhu, to the court of King Janaka, instructing him to go and learn something from the king. When the sadhu arrived at the royal court, he observed that everyone there was fully immersed in luxury and material enjoyment. Seeing this, the sadhu thought to himself, "What could King Janaka possibly teach me when he himself is so engrossed in worldly pleasures?" He felt a deep sense of disappointment and doubt toward his guru for sending him to such a person. However, when King Janaka noticed the sadhu, he welcomed him with immense reverence. He respectfully offered him a seat, washed his feet, and said gently, "Please rest for now, we shall speak in the morning." The sadhu was a strict renunciant who had abandoned all worldly comforts and lived far away from any indulgence. Despite the lingering judgment in his mind, he stayed the night in the royal palace. The next morning, King Janaka met the sadhu and said, "Let us go to the river to take a bath." A short time after they stepped into the river to bathe, the sadhu noticed that the palace in the distance had caught fire. He instantly became restless and anxious. Turning to the king, he cried out, "My two simple undergarments are lying outside on the river bank. They will burn away." King Janaka calmly replied, "My entire palace is burning. But I did not bring this palace with me when I came into this world. It was built here in this world, and it is burning right here." The sadhu was deeply astonished. He thought to himself, even while his entire palace is turning to ashes, he speaks with such utter detachment, as if he has no clinging to it whatsoever, whereas I am getting distressed over two worthless pieces of cloth. In that very moment, a profound realization dawned upon him. He was the one truly trapped in attachment, while King Janaka was the true renunciant. He understood that despite living amidst all worldly abundance, the king lived with a pure spirit of detachment, whereas he, as a sadhu, possessed nothing on the outside, yet his mind remained bound by attachment. It was then that the sadhu truly understood why his spiritual master had sent him to King Janaka. He realized that despite living amidst worldly abundance, the king was a true renunciant at heart. King Janaka was trapped neither in indulgence nor in renunciation. he was simply awakened. This state of spiritual awakening is the highest and most profound state of life. Only someone who is truly awakened is walking the path of self-realization. If you remain caught up in mere indulgence or rigid renunciation, you are far from self-realization. To live in self-realization means that even while interacting with the world, you remain completely detached within, and you never needlessly torment yourself, because you live in total awareness. This is indeed a deeply sublime state of being. Ultimately, this state of self-realization is genuinely needed only by someone who is awakened from within, someone who deeply desires to know, why was I born? When such a seeker realizes that certain elevated souls can actually remember their past lives, they are filled with profound wonder and ask, what is the deeper truth behind all of this? As they try to dive into these spiritual depths and observe the world around them, seeing how a tiny seed gives birth to a massive, magnificent tree, or how gold, silver, and oil mysteriously emerge from the depths of the earth, they are left in awe of nature's design. Witnessing these boundless miracles of creation, they naturally feel a deep magnetic pull toward the divine. However, for a person who feels no such attraction toward the divine, there is no desire whatsoever to walk this path, because their entire life is spent simply chasing worldly pleasures and luxury. This is why ordinary people in the world often give no reverence to the divine. However, when they fall into severe hardship and feel defeated from every side, they finally sense this higher power. Only then do they turn toward God and dedicate their lives to self-realization. Those whose hearts are already turned toward the divine find deep wonder in the simplest of things. They marvel at how we can plant a tiny sapling in a pot, add just a nominal amount of soil and a little water, and within 3 or 4 months, that little plant grows to weigh 5 kilograms. They recognize that this boundless growth is the creative power of the universe at work. Witnessing these everyday miracles is what draws their attention toward the divine and moves them forward on the path of self-realization. 3,000 years ago, the great philosopher Socrates experienced this very same truth. He would often say, "An inner power guides me from within and shows me the way." This deep awareness guided him ever forward on the path of self-realization. Even when he was condemned to drink poison, he demonstrated his absolute spiritual detachment. As the poison took hold of his system, he calmly observed, "My body is going numb." Yet, an hour later, even as the end approached, he declared with clarity, "I am still fully aware." In his final moments, his last words were that the pure, divine energy residing within him was simply departing from his physical body. Socrates truly felt this divine presence throughout his life and revealed to the world that recognizing and understanding this supreme power is the very essence of self-realization. Interestingly, he never wrote down a single word himself. All of his teachings and experiences were recorded by his devoted disciples. He simply lived his life as an open book before the world, a living example of a soul constantly immersed in the divine power of the Almighty. Pythagoras also conducted numerous experiments and ultimately revealed that there is a profound connection between the food we eat and the thoughts we think. It is through the dedicated efforts and sacrifices of such great seekers that we are able to explore and understand the deeper truths of self-realization today. There is an insightful story that illustrates this well. A deeply religious man, who regularly attended church, tragically lost his wife. Sometime later, he grew close to the woman who worked as a housekeeper in his home, and together they had a son. Overcome with guilt, he began to view himself as a sinner and could never rise above the judgment he placed on his own actions. He suffered immense emotional turmoil. His entire life revolved around the heavy burden of what he perceived to be a terrible sin. Years later, growing increasingly overwhelmed by his inner restlessness when his son turned 20, he finally confessed the entire story to him. The son was deeply astonished. He wondered how his father could spend his entire life tormented by such a natural occurrence, completely missing the truth that life is like a flowing river. Just as water flows continuously in a river, no matter what comes into its path, it simply keeps moving. When you step into a river once and then step out, the next time you step back in, neither the water is the same nor is your body the same. The very cells of your physical form are constantly changing, just as the world around you is always evolving. The son was amazed that despite spending so many years immersed in religion, his father could not free himself from the burden of a single past action. He realized that all of his father's rituals and regular church visits had failed to teach him a fundamental spiritual truth. Life is a continuous, flowing stream. Unexpected things will happen along the way, but a person must always learn to let go and keep moving forward. After explaining this to his father, the son left home. He had lost all faith in organized religion, disillusioned that it could not even teach a person that what had happened in that brief moment of weakness was simply a natural biological need. After walking away, the son did not adopt any formal religion. Instead, he embarked on an inward journey and attained self-realization within himself. He went on to write several books, and in his final instructions, he wrote, "Do not perform my last rites according to any traditional religious rituals or systems. Rigid systems are like barriers that obstruct running water, turning it into a stagnant pond where the water becomes dirty and trapped. Self-realization is like the free-flowing river Ganges. Simply observe whatever is happening around you, remain aware, and through this constant awareness, you will naturally rise above all your past karmas." This is the core essence of that seeker's great book. Ultimately, constant awareness is the greatest requirement for self-realization. Through this awakening, You effortlessly rise above everything you have ever done in your past. In a similar way, there was another great seeker and philosopher, Siddhartha. He belonged to a very prosperous royal family. His home was filled with every kind of wealth and comfort, and there was no lack of anything. Yet, he could never find true satisfaction or fulfillment in a life of worldly luxury and indulgence. The divine intended to guide him toward the path of self-realization. So, one day, he went to his father and said gently, "I am leaving home. Even though I lack nothing here, I have no inner peace. What I am truly seeking, I cannot find in this palace." And with that, taking his father's blessings, he departed on his spiritual journey. One of Siddhartha's friends agreed to accompany him on this quest. Together, they traveled to the mountains to perform rigorous austerities and meditation, but they found no inner peace there. Next, they meditated in a secluded cave, yet true peace still eluded them. Realizing these practices were not bringing them closer to the truth, they left them behind. Soon after, Siddhartha learned about Gautama Buddha, a great and supreme enlightened master. He considered taking spiritual initiation from him or becoming a monk. Both friends went to sit at the feet of the Buddha. Siddhartha's friend, whose name was Gopal, was deeply moved by the Buddha's presence and immediately ordained as a monk. Siddhartha, however, felt differently. He approached the Buddha and asked him directly, "What have you truly attained through your enlightenment?" The Buddha did not answer the question directly. Instead, he simply stated that the world is full of suffering, and there is a way to overcome that suffering. But Siddhartha pressed further, asking again, "What did you actually experience in your self-realization?" The Buddha simply gazed deeply into Siddhartha's eyes and remained silent. Realizing that enlightenment is an inner experience that cannot be borrowed through words, Siddhartha respectfully departed from there as well. Now, Siddhartha set out on his journey entirely alone, with no clear destination in mind. Eventually, he arrived in a bustling city. There, he was captivated by a remarkably beautiful woman, and she, in turn, was deeply drawn to his quiet presence. She graciously offered him food. During their conversation, Siddhartha shared his simple truth with her: "I have patience, I can think, and I have the power to understand. Aside from this, I possess nothing else." The woman, whose name was Kamla, replied, "I cannot offer you employment myself, but there is a wealthy merchant in this city. Go to him, he will value your qualities greatly." Following Kamala's advice, Siddhartha went to the merchant. Using his sharp intellect and wisdom, he guided the business so skillfully that in a very short time, the merchant amassed immense wealth. Impressed by his guidance, the merchant made Siddhartha a full partner in the business, and Siddhartha soon became a very wealthy man himself. Throughout this entire period of worldly success, he continued his relationship with Kamla. After 5 or 10 years had passed, a thought arose in Siddhartha's mind. I left my father's royal palace for a greater truth, yet here I am, simply carried away by the worldly current of life. I have seen the world. I have experienced everything it has to offer. But is this how I will spend the rest of my days? When his inner yearning for self-realization grew intense once again, despite possessing immense wealth and living in a palace-like mansion, he quietly walked away from it all without telling anyone. He wandered until he reached a solitary bank along a quiet river and sat down. He remained there for many days, finding profound inner peace in the presence of the river. By watching the water, he truly understood that life, too, is a continuous, flowing stream. There, he met a humble boatman. Siddhartha began living in the boatman's home and shared in his simple daily work of ferrying people across the river. In this quiet simplicity, he brought his mind to a state of absolute stillness and emptiness, a pure void, and finally attained the supreme realization of the Brahman, the ultimate reality. He was completely free from attachment to anything. He had walked away from his father's royal home, left behind the vast wealth he had earned, remained unsatisfied by borrowing words from Buddha, and ultimately realized through his own experience that life is like a flowing river. A river never stops anywhere until it merges with the ocean. One must flow effortlessly with it, for true wisdom comes from moving with the stream of life without clinging to anything along the way. During this time, Kamla arrived at the riverbank with a young boy. She said to Siddhartha, "This is your own son," and left the child in his care before departing. Siddhartha raised his son with great affection and patience. However, when the boy grew a little older, he did not enjoy his father's simple, ascetic way of life by the river, and eventually, he too ran away from home. Sometime later, Siddhartha's old friend Gopal, who had become a devoted monk in the Buddha's order, came by the river. Seeing the radiant aura surrounding Siddhartha, Gopal was overwhelmed with awe and wonder. He thought to himself, "What an extraordinary transformation! He has attained such greatness that his eyes reflect pure stillness and emptiness. His presence feels even more profound than that of Gautama Buddha himself." Deeply moved, Gopal begged his old friend, "Please, guide me on the spiritual path." Siddhartha gently replied, "The path cannot be taught or guided by words. You must find your own way through your own direct experience." Then, Siddhartha simply said, "Come close and kiss my forehead." The very moment Gopal kissed Siddhartha's forehead, a divine spark of self-realization ignited within him. In a fraction of a second, Gopal was transformed into an entirely new person. He had attained true spiritual enlightenment. Ultimately, Siddhartha lived the rest of his life flowing harmoniously with the river, residing in a state of absolute inner emptiness and stillness. By immersing himself in this deep void, he attained the supreme wisdom of that emptiness. This is a profound and authentic account, and a great book has been written about how he became a supreme enlightened master. By flowing effortlessly with the current of life, he embraced whatever came his way without fighting or resisting anything. He simply lived wherever nature guided him, holding no attachment to any object or worldly comfort. When a person reaches this state of complete inner emptiness, free from all craving, living in a state of choiceless awareness, and joyfully accepting whatever life presents, self-realization naturally unfolds on its own when the time is right. You must have surely heard the name of J. Krishnamurti. When Leadbeater and Madame Blavatsky first saw this young boy on the seashore in Madras, he was in a deeply impoverished and neglected condition. Yet, Leadbeater possessed such elevated spiritual vision that simply by looking at someone, their past lives would clearly unfold before his eyes. When he saw this boy, he was deeply moved and impressed by his spiritual aura, despite the child's severe outer poverty. Leadbeater immediately contacted Blavatsky, who traveled there as well. After speaking with the boy's parents, they adopted him along with his brother, dedicating their efforts to preparing Krishnamurti to become a world teacher. They arranged for his formal education in England, completely refined his upbringing, and imparted profound spiritual wisdom and self-realization to him even during his deep states of sleep. When his mentors felt fully satisfied with his preparation, they officially proclaimed him to the world as the world teacher under the banner of the Order of the Star in the East. However, during a gathering in the Netherlands, when an attempt was made to channel the spirit of Lord Maitreya through him, Krishnamurti refused to allow any external consciousness to enter his being and firmly rejected the title of world teacher. He returned all the millions of dollars that had been collected globally for the Order of the Star and declared his absolute spiritual freedom. All the years of intense effort and labor that Leadbeater and Blavatsky had invested in him seemingly came to nothing. Krishnamurti made it clear that self-realization cannot be bestowed or handed down in such an artificial manner. During a deeply painful period in his life when his beloved brother fell severely ill and could not be saved from death, Krishnamurti deeply reflected, "If my own brother could not be saved, how can anyone claim the power to save this entire world?" He proclaimed that truth dawns naturally in profound silence. It cannot be forcefully installed or manufactured within oneself through mere mechanical effort or spiritual exercises. For years, his mentors had attempted to forcefully instill higher states of consciousness into him through various systematic stages. Because of this artificial pressure, he endured immense physical agony, often spending sleepless nights crying out in pain. It was as though a young tree had been forcefully pulled upward by its branches to make it grow taller, rather than allowing it to mature on its own. Had the tree of his consciousness been permitted to grow naturally through spontaneous self-realization, his physical body would never have had to suffer such extreme torment and deterioration. He himself shared this truth. For 40 years, I endured such intense physical and mental restlessness that words simply cannot describe it. I would spend entire nights crying out in pain because a tremendous spiritual energy had been poured into me, yet my physical body was simply not ready to hold it. Profound wisdom had certainly awakened within me, but I was not in a condition to smoothly share or transmit it to everyone around me, because when true realization dawns, a person enters a state of absolute inner emptiness and stillness. For brief moments, I would rest in that pure void, but my physical body simply could not sustain or handle that profound emptiness. Yet, despite all these struggles, over the course of those 40 years, he did everything he possibly could to share the message of self-realization with people everywhere. However, his fundamental teaching always remained the same: self-realization is entirely beyond the realm of thought. It arises naturally only through pure, silent observation. It unfolds in its own time. It can never be forcefully installed through strained effort or artificial methods. If anyone attempts to force this spiritual awakening, the journey becomes an extremely painful and agonizing ordeal. We owe a deep debt of gratitude to J. Krishnamurti, for what he has given to humanity is truly beyond comparison. He was such an elevated soul that he even refused the title of world teacher, and it was in that spirit of total freedom and detachment that the divine blessed him with supreme self-realization. Despite enduring continuous physical suffering, he dedicated 40 years of his life to traveling to every corner of the globe for the welfare of humanity, doing everything he could to bring the message of self-realization to every doorstep. There was also a great, perfected spiritual master, a Siddha Purusha, who came from Kerala. Guided by the deep spiritual awakening of his previous lives, at the tender age of just 6, he sought his parents' blessings and left home in search of a true guru. He eventually found his master, a sage named Gajanan, from whom he received spiritual initiation. Through this guidance, he attained supreme enlightenment at a remarkably young age. Eventually, he established his ashram in the city of Hubli. He had reached such an exalted spiritual state that when a devastating plague began spreading through Hubli, his divine power became evident to all. Living in that supreme state of spiritual mastery, he once instructed his disciples, "I will sit in a horse-drawn carriage. Take my carriage through every street and alley where the plague has spread. Drive me through all those afflicted areas, and by evening, bring me back here to the ashram." Following his command, the disciples guided the carriage through every suffering neighborhood before returning him safely to the ashram. Remarkably, simply by his presence passing through those streets, the plague vanished completely, as if it had been effortlessly swept away by a powerful gust of wind. This, too, is a magnificent manifestation of the profound power of self-realization. For anyone who chooses to walk the path of self-realization, extraordinary spiritual powers awaken within them, powers so immense that words simply cannot describe them. Even while flowing effortlessly with the current of life's river, they attain the ultimate wisdom of the Brahman, the supreme reality. No matter what circumstances arise in life, they never fight or resist anything. They simply maintain a state of constant awareness. J. Krishnamurti also consistently inspired humanity to cultivate this constant awareness and to live in an awakened state. The underlying lesson behind all the stories I have shared with you today is simply this: if you remain watchful and aware, self-realization will naturally permeate every single cell of your being. Only then will you be truly capable of performing the highest service and welfare for the world. However, in our modern era, attaining such supreme wisdom through total, spontaneous surrender is very difficult. Today, self-realization can be achieved if we carry a strong inner resolve and determination, guiding ourselves through dedicated practices like Kriya Yoga, mantra chanting, and entering deep states of meditation. And ultimately, when we are blessed with the grace of the Divine, whichever path He chooses to place us on, we can smoothly and effortlessly advance toward that supreme spiritual wisdom. Self-realization holds immense importance in life so that we may truly understand ourselves, to discover why we were born and what we should do with our lives. Why is everything happening the way it is around us? We gain the understanding of all this only through self-realization, and it is the Divine Himself who guides us forward on this path. In truth, only those whom the Almighty wishes to lead in that direction can walk the path of self-realization. Within their hearts alone does that inner spark ignite, the deep yearning to reach the Lord. Without this initial spark, the living fire of self-realization can never be kindled within our very being. Therefore, we should continuously pray to the Divine, asking that through His grace and power, He guides our steps towards self-realization so that we may truly experience spiritual awakening in our lives and attain the Lord. This is indeed the highest and most sublime state of being. If we do not pursue this deeper truth, our entire lives will simply slip away, trapped in the endless cycle of indulgence and renunciation. It is absolutely essential that we rise above both indulgence and renunciation to truly awaken, for only through this awakening can we reach the ultimate destination of self-realization. Thank you.